I am Hamish, this is Stan, and this is Civil Banter. We're civil litigators at Nelligan Law, helping people through injuries, insurance fights, and life's legal curveballs with straight talk and a bit of banter. So welcome to episode 6 of Civil Banter. This episode is the Accident Benefits Bonanza, part 1. The subject of this episode is all accident benefits, which is far more interesting than it sounds at first. But first, we need to get into our favorite segment, LARPing. Lawyers are real people-ing. So in this segment, we'll be answering the question of how we've been filling our time outside of work. What have we been watching? What have we been listening to? What sports have we been involved in? What sports have we been following, perhaps? So, Stan, let's start off. How have you been spending your time?
Well, this is recording before, obviously, it airs, and substantially so. But
you ruined the illusion.
We know when it's going to air, and I'm preemptively going to say I'm very excited for the CFL season to start. Canada's take on football, and I'm a big CFL fan, big football fan. And I encourage everybody to support Canada's game in the summer. Get out there, support the Red Blacks, and I'm excited for the season to start. It will have just kicked off by the time this airs.
Okay. So how long have you followed the Red Blacks?
Well, since they've been a team. They haven't been a team for all that long.
Okay,
previously, they were the Renegades, and before that, they were the Rough Riders when the league had two teams called the Rough Riders. Long time since I've been able to think independently. Basically, I've loved football, and I've always supported the local team when it's been around.
Okay, let me ask you this. I know essentially nothing of either the NFL or the CFL, but how good is my general knowledge when I say Canadian Football League field is longer?
Yes, it is. It's 10 yards longer.
And there are fewer downs?
There are fewer downs. You only have 3 downs in the CFL as opposed to 4.
Any other big pub quiz factoids that I should know?
Everybody likes to say our balls are bigger, and it's true that they are. They are. That is a factual statement.
Okay.
Yeah, the end zones are bigger. There's a few key differences. I won't get into the minutia of the differences, but I think you know what, it's a really entertaining game. It moves a lot faster than the NFL does, especially vis-a-vis commercial breaks and things like that. So if you have a short attention span, as I think we all are increasingly getting shorter attention spans, the CFL moves a lot quicker. So there's only 20 seconds between plays.
Okay.
And in the NFL, it's 40 seconds between plays.
Right.
And there's more TV timeouts, and the clock stops more often in the NFL than it does in the CFL.
Is part of that just to do with it being less commercial?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's always been a shorter play clock that I've been aware of, and same with the NFL. So I like it. It moves a lot quicker. So,
and it's accessible, right? Like Red Blacks tickets are really not that expensive at all.
That's right. And you know what? They have a really great atmosphere there where you can walk around. I mean, a lot of the people there aren't, frankly, even watching the game, it seems like, but they're having a good time. They're socializing. Ottawa in the summer, right by the canal. It's a beautiful place to see a game. There will eventually be a new north side stands. I know that hasn't quite been worked out yet, but I like it. It's an interesting stadium.
I have been. I've just managed to pick up very little of like the substance of how the game works. But the last time I went, I think it was literally Halloween, and it was really, 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 really cold.
That's the thing, right? So, in June, July, August, September, it's great. If it's not raining, it's great. Even if it is raining, as long as it's not too cold or too windy, it's a pretty good time. You get into that fall, you got to be a dedicated fan. You know what I say? You got to dress for it.
Right.
If you dress for it, you'll have a good time. If you're thinking you'll get away with a jean jacket and no gloves or toque, then you're going to be there for a rough ride. So, Hamish, what are you up to? What are you thinking about these days?
So, I have a double feature.
Okay.
I have a pairing.
A pairing.
Like wine and cheese.
Yeah.
I'm pairing the biopic A Complete Unknown, starring Timothy Chalamet, about Bob Dylan.
Okay, right on.
That would be the wine.
Yeah.
And then the cheese would be Ken Burns Vietnam.
A little substantial
Yeah.
learning to go along with your fun Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah, so the biopic, the Bob Dylan movie, it's really, really good. I thought it was really well done. It's by the same, I believe, the same director that directed Walk the Line, which was the Johnny Cash biopic from mid 2000s. And Timothy Chalamet does all the singing, all the guitar. He really sort of captured. It's not a direct imitation.
Right. A little bit of a more artistic impression.
Yes. Yeah, but it's really good, really enjoyable, and just because of the time period in which it takes place, as soon as I watched it, I just couldn't get the Vietnam War out of my head. So
it comes with the territory. You get those kind of protest song vibes.
Right.
I could see it. Yeah.
Right. So then I jumped into, which I've already seen before, but it's excellent. Ken Burns has, I think, a 15-part, each episode's like an hour and a half, documentary on the Vietnam War, which is just incredibly well done.
Anything Ken Burns does is fantastic. I feel like I haven't seen his stuff in a little while, but so good.
Yeah.
So detailed, right? You're saying 15 parts and they're all long and they're all very detailed, incredibly shot. Excellent stuff.
Good music too,
well,
right?
The soundtrack must be phenomenal. The
Yeah.
last one I watched was a thing about the Roosevelts, Teddy Roosevelt and FDR. And so the music wasn't really the key factor on that particular documentary. Is one on the Civil War in the West and the Second World War. But nothing as good, I wager, as the Vietnam Wars playlist.
Yeah. And, it starts, I think the first episode, it starts in like 1850. So it's a very comprehensive history of Vietnam, and it tells, I think, and I'm not that knowledgeable about the Vietnam War, but it seems like it tells the story from all sides really well. There's lots of interviews with Viet Cong, North Vietnamese army soldiers, and people involved in the politics at the time, and then just like everyday families. It's a really comprehensive, well-rounded documentary that really gives you the impression of both the social situation within the States, the social and political situation in Vietnam, and then the military situation too. So well worth the watch.
I'll put it on the list. I got to check it out. You know us, we're all history buffs on this podcast.
And then moving on from that, we're going to go straight into everyone's favorite segment. This is The Reasonable Stan. We're mixing things up a little bit this time in that instead of going on Canly, the legal research database, I went on www.ccla-abcc.ca. Now,
for our listeners, what is that?
That is the County of Carleton Law Association's website. So this is the local law association here in Ottawa. It's an amazing resource. They run the library at the courthouse. They have a website with loads of helpful information for lawyers and self-represented parties alike.
And what is it that you found on the website that is going to be used in this segment?
Well, I clicked on civil litigation on the homepage, and then, it's practice portals, civil litigation, and then the compendium of damages awarded in personal injury actions across Ontario, January 1999 through October 2024.
It's a really excellent database of damages quantums that we use frequently in our line of work to decide or to advocate for our clients about how much their claim may be worth.
Yeah, and it's just a brilliant resource that a subcommittee of
volunteers, I don't think they're paid to do this.
No, they're all local lawyers, volunteers, part of the law association who dedicate their time to combing through East Region cases
and beyond.
And beyond. And there's one for just cost awards too, and then there's one for personal injury damages. And it's just case by case, a brief summary of the facts, the damages, whether or not it was appealed, and going through the different heads of damages, and it just simplifies everything, puts everything in one place. Compendium.
Big shout out there.
Yeah, incredibly helpful resource. So I clicked on the first 2024 case I could find with a female plaintiff.
All right.
So the setup of the game, as you all know, is I read select facts from the case. Stan gets to ask me a couple of questions, and then he attempts to assess general damages for pain and suffering, and we compare how close Stan's number is to the amount actually awarded at trial. Now, the first time we played this, Stan was a bit far off.
Always way off. I'll admit it. Not even close.
He was $45,000 off. The second time we played this, you really moved a lot.
I got out of damages mania. I focused. I was back in the saddle on that one.
$5,000 off, and then the last time we played, you were $2,500 off. So
I feel like that's a high bar now, and I don't think I'm going to be able to be any closer than that. But we'll see.
I'm almost expecting a bullseye on this, and if it's anything less, then I'm going to feel a bit let down. So
time will tell.
So the case is Kotorashvili and Lee, 2024, ONSC 1495. So this is an interesting case of a plaintiff who moved to Canada at age 11. She's just a couple of years younger than me. And when she was about 23, she got into mixed martial arts. She's training 5 days a week, very involved in it. She has a son, to the extent that matters, who is 2.5 years old.
2.5 years old.
2.5 years old.
Do we do it up to like, if he was 11 months, 2 years and 11, would he be 2.11?
0.95 or something? I don't know. If he was 11 months old,
no, he wouldn't be, because that would be 0.11. Anyway, right. Just a strange way to say it. I like it.
So August 2016, during an MMA class, she suffers a severe fracture to her right clavicle. So collarbone gets fractured.
Ouch.
This is a medical malpractice case, which we haven't touched on before. So the basis of the case is she has a surgery to repair the fractured clavicle because it's completely displaced, and they're worried that it's just not going to heal. Because a lot of the time, especially
there could be non-displaced fractures for sure.
Yeah, and collarbones is one of the ones. This is just anecdotal. Obviously, we're not doctors here, but from my understanding, a lot of the time people just get their arm in a sling, and it's not really a surgical option.
I seem to recall a lot of NFL quarterbacks have had this type of injury before, and some of them have played through, not a displaced one, but would have been able to play through a broken clavicle at times. But the fact that it's displaced, which correct me if I'm wrong, but it means that it's completely broken. So there's nothing attaching the two sides of the fracture.
Yeah.
And so it would have had to, in this case, I imagine, been repaired with hardware, which means nails and other sort of binding agents, screws, what have you. It's usually they're screws now, I think, but we're getting into the weeds.
I can't read these cases and just think this just sounds a lot like shop class. This is it's obviously more sophisticated than a trip to Home Depot, but when you're reading about the screws and the plates involved, it sounds like a parts bin at Home Depot. So she has a plate and screws affixed. But as you know, this does happen from time to time. As the fracture heals, she can feel the hardware that's been inserted because it's close to the skin and causes hypersensitivity around the collarbone, and she cannot feel it, and it's really bothering her.
It's tough.
Now, it's mostly phrased around discomfort and hypersensitivity in this case. She complains about it, and the doctor recommends going in and removing the hardware. And the time between the first surgery when she gets the hardware put in and the second surgery when she has it removed is less than a year. It's about 10 months. So she has the hardware removed, and not long after it's removed, like within weeks of it being removed, it refractures the clavicle again.
Well, you know what? Let's just park lipo. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay. So it breaks again.
Breaks again, and not doing anything in particular, or at least it's not reporting the cases of her doing anything in
I think we're
particular.
accepting that there was a finding the doctor was negligent in this case.
There was a finding of negligence.
I don't need to worry about causation when assessing these damages.
You don't need to worry about causation, but while I mean that is you don't have to worry about that, but it is referenced in the case that it's not clear what her level of function would have been had she just fractured it originally. So it's like a background fact, but she is awarded damages for pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And it's phrased in terms of hypersensitivity that, well, she's had multiple surgeries because she had the surgery and then she had it repaired. And the whole issue is, did you take out the hardware too early? If there wasn't complete bony union.
She would have needed it removed in any event, though, right?
Yes.
So we're not dealing with a surgery that was required because of negligence. It would have had to happen anyway.
Yes, it's all about the refracture.
Are there any surgeries other than the first two, the one to repair it initially and then the removal of the hardware?
Yes. Okay, there's a final surgery.
A third surgery.
A third surgery. And the third surgery is once the hardware is removed, it heals from the second fracture, and it heals in a disjointed way. So there's a bump in her clavicle, like a visible bump.
Mm-hmm.
And she then gets that addressed. She gets the bump essentially shaved down.
In a fourth surgery? Or that's the third surgery?
That's the third surgery. Because it's fracture,
right?
Remove hardware, collarbone then heals with a bump, and then that gets fixed in a final surgery with a different doctor.
I imagine at that point.
So, yeah. So there were two... No, there was one surgery
that's required because of the negligence. The other two would not be compensable because they were going to have to happen anyway.
Exactly. And, this case that it reads a lot like a primarily medical malpractice liability case, but there is a general damage award. She's complaining about weakness, inability to lift laundry baskets, and then discomfort.
I think at the end of the MMA career, or, not career, but as a social and recreational activity, does not return to that?
She does return to that.
Oh, okay. But she couldn't carry a laundry basket. Okay.
No question. Yeah. Or it's discomfort when carrying laundry basket. The case goes to great pains to define everything primarily in terms of discomfort. But at the end of the day, she has had a surgery.
The surgery sucks, and that should be compensable, and I'm sure it was.
Right. And also just recovering from the surgery too.
Yeah. But we're dealing with discomfort. There's no sign in there of like a functional impairment, things that she's unable to do as a result of the third surgery.
It really just gets talked about in the context of basically a laundry basket and weakness.
Yeah, I'm not blown away by that in terms of high-end damages. It sounds unpleasant for sure, compensable for sure, but without anything, I'm not hearing anything about a functional impairment, things she can't do. It doesn't sound like there's a mention of a career here that would have been impacted, or any childcare shortcomings as a result of the injury, or are there?
Not that's apparent from the case.
Okay.
What I could do is I could give you the range of general damages that the plaintiff sought.
I mean, that's helpful. I'll take any.
I think it's fair in this. So the plaintiff seeks general damages in the range of $25,000 to $100,000.
Wow, you could land a plane on that gap. I'm thinking it's closer to the $25,000 mark than it is the higher end of things. Although a surgery is unpleasant and there's always risks associated with undergoing surgery, especially one that you otherwise would not have had to undergo. stresses associated with that, I'm going to say 35.
You did it.
What?
You did it.
No way.
Yeah, $35,000.
Oh boy. Right on.
So, wow. So you've chipped away.
That's fantastic.
You've chipped away episode by episode, and
There's nowhere to go but down now, though. So that's tough. Well, next episode we're gonna flip the script, and I'm gonna be the one proposing a scenario to you. So look forward to that, folks.
Yeah, maybe we have to retire the reasonable Stan for a bit.
We'll have to see what the viewers and listeners want.
Die a hero or live long enough to become a villain.
Oh, I like it.
Okay, so let's move on to Accident Benefits Bonanza Part 1. So,
I love the title of this episode.
pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
So why don't you kick it off by fielding
Well,
some questions, and I'll see what I can do.
How about I start with, I think, what is the obvious question? What are accident benefits?
So accident benefits are when you're involved in a few different capacities in a car accident, you can claim medical, income, and a whole host of other benefits.
There really is a long list of them.
There's a long list from often your insurance company, but even if it's not your insurance company, automobile insurance policy, and they're on a no-fault basis, which is really key here. So what that means is, and we'll go into some examples later, but no-fault basis means if I am steaming along on the highway and I have a attention lapse, all the traffic slows down in front of me, and I plow into the back of your car, it was my bad, I can still claim accident benefits. So if my neck is tweaked, or if I had a concussion, or if I'm hypervigilant driving afterwards and I'm having a really hard time getting back in the car, or if I had to take time off work, I can claim those accident benefits regardless of the fact that I was arguably, probably, definitely responsible for the crash.
Yeah, I think they're really just, it's an industry term for benefits that are available to people who've been involved in an accident resulting from the use or operation of a motor vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who's been hurt in a car accident, and it's a little bit broader than that, but for all intents and purposes, let's just say car accidents that have caused injuries, you can seek these accident benefits.
Right, and it's a province, it's an Ontario specific thing, I'm sure, but I'm just ignorant of there being similar schemes in different provinces, probably different states too, different jurisdictions, but
we're going to restrict this to the Ontario scheme.
Mm-hmm. And it does matter, and it's essentially, the idea is it's a social safety net to make sure that, realistically driving a car day to day is the most dangerous thing ordinary people do. Or
can be around if you're not even a driver. Ask a pedestrian who's been hit by a car.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a thing that hundreds of thousands, million...
Everybody in the province interacts with the motor vehicle.
In some capacity.
Whether you have a license and drive one, or whether you cross a street as a pedestrian, or you get driven to the airport, or what have you, everybody interacts with motor vehicles.
So it would just be pandemonium if we didn't have some guarantee that there was insurance coverage when this whole setup inevitably goes wrong. And generally speaking, the amount of coverage you have in Ontario, I'm sure like people have bones to pick about the specifics, but generally it's pretty good. There are a couple of different levels of benefits we'll get into, but if you're hurt and you're injured and you cannot work, there is this social safety net.
There's help available to you.
There's help available, and it's about making sure to alert the right people, and there is a system in place.
And generally speaking, like we said, anybody who's been involved in a car accident or a bus accident or anything involved, ATV, motor vehicle accident, can apply for these. There are certain cases where you're not eligible for certain benefits. I won't get too far into that, but if you don't have insurance, but you were the driver of the car, or if you were operating a vehicle and you knew you didn't have the consent of the owner, or if you are an excluded driver under a policy of insurance, or if you've been convicted of impaired driving as a result of the accident, certain benefits will not be available to you,
Right.
but you can still get medical benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you've done some of those things that would exclude you from income replacement coverage, you'll still be able to get medical coverage.
Right. And I guess the general broadly, when can you apply for accident benefits? In some of the unconventional situations, it's even if you're a pedestrian and you don't own a car, no one you live with owns a car. You don't drive a car for work, and you're a pedestrian crossing the street, and you get hit by a car. You can apply for accident benefits. You are covered under our policy, even if you don't have your own policy.
That's right. You would be covered by the policy of the vehicle that hit you. And if that person's uninsured, you can make a claim to the Motor Vehicle Accidents Fund.
Right. And that's a further safety net. So it really is, even if there's no insurance policy that appears to respond, if it's involving a motor vehicle, you can apply through the Provincial Motor Vehicle Accident Claims Fund.
Which gets back to the whole social safety net principle. And, another reason to have these is that traditionally, if you were involved in an accident, you would go after the at-fault driver. We've addressed these are no-fault benefits. But let's say you're not at fault anyway. You're going after the at-fault party for damages. Lawsuits take a really long time, especially now, and they're getting longer. So these benefits are available much quicker than a tort settlement, which would be cash that you could use on things like treatment. This is funding for treatment on an interim basis.
And one of the misconceptions or the questions we get asked is, it's not benefits in the same way that some benefits necessarily pay cash straight to you.
That's right.
It can be for income, but
it can be.
But how does it work in a medical situation?
I kind of think about it as anybody who's lucky enough to have a workplace benefits plan where you can get coverage for things like massage therapy or psychological therapy, regardless of whether you were involved in a workplace incident. They're just available to you because you have a workplace plan. This operates in a very similar way, except instead of a workplace, it's a motor vehicle involved. So if you've been involved in this motor vehicle setting, you can access things like physiotherapy or chiropractic therapy, massage therapy, occupational therapy. We're going to get to these in our next episode, part 2. But those are the ways that I think a lot of people should think about this. Another thing that people should think about is if you are the policy holder, so you've been paying your premiums, you own an insurance policy attached to a vehicle, this is something that your payments have covered. It's part of your policy. It's a coverage that is something you're contractually obligated to receive if you qualify for them.
And it's also one of those things where I think a lot of people don't even know that this scheme exists because, when I'm shopping around for car insurance, I'm thinking in my head, even despite doing this work, I'm thinking about if someone crashes into my car, who will pay me for the damage to my car. Right. And I think that's what most people are thinking about when they think about car insurance.
I'm sure 99% of people are thinking what we call property damage to the vehicle.
Right.
Is my car going to be repaired, and how much does my policy cost to do that?
And we do property damage claims, but the bulk of what we do and where there's often most at stake and where it's more complicated is when it comes to the medical side, because unlike a property damage claim where it often just comes down to
what's the car worth if it's a write-off,
right?
Or is this quote to repair the vehicle too high or too low?
Yeah. So there's often, there are technical, complicated situations, but generally speaking, it's kind of just navigating between those two topics, and it gets resolved. It can get resolved pretty quickly, but when it comes to what injuries or impairments did someone have as a result of this accident, what was their situation before? Why aren't they working now? Does that entitle them to income replacement benefits? Were they providing care to someone that they're no longer able to do? Does their house need modifying? These are all things that are significantly more complicated. There's more at stake, and it can have a bigger impact on someone's life than the financial value of, whether their car was worth X dollars or Y dollars.
That's right. And when people are thinking about car insurance, I strongly encourage them to seek the assistance of a broker when they're doing that, because they will be the ones who are qualified and licensed to provide you with the advice about the kind of coverage that you need, given your situation in life. And we're not going to stray into that telling people what they should or shouldn't have in terms of insurance coverage. They should know that there are these coverages available and that they should really consult with an expert in terms of selecting the appropriate policy.
Right. And we'll go into that next episode in terms of some of the changes that are coming down the pipe. But, just quickly following on from the pedestrian, other situations where you can have access to accident benefits are you're a cyclist, you're hit by a car. If you don't have your own car and you're not covered by your own policy, you need to get the driver's insurance details because you can make a claim on their policy. If you rear end someone or if you T-bone someone,
or you drive into a tree.
Exactly. If there's no other car involved, and if you drive off a road in the situation, you can still get access to accident benefits. And then, of course, if someone rear ends you, if someone T-bones you while you're driving and someone else is at fault, you can still just as much claim on accident benefits. It's just you potentially also have a claim in the civil court, a lawsuit, in addition to your accident benefits claim.
And if you are going to pursue a claim against somebody who's caused this to happen to you, you have to apply for accident benefits.
Right.
You're obligated to.
It's mandatory.
You have to. And that's in the legislation. It's also to reduce the exposure of the tort defendant as well.
And then getting into specifically what to do, I mean, if you have a car or you're insured under a policy, that's who you would report it to. And sometimes there are disputes between insurance companies. Which policy responds first? At the end of the day, you report it to an insurer, generally your insurer.
If you have your own insurance policy, they will always be the one to respond.
Right. And then if there are issues in the background, the insurers will figure it out and you will get accident benefits one way or another. But often, you can potentially be insured under your roommate's policy. If you're a university student, you don't have a car, but potentially there's coverage under your roommate's policy or your spouse's policy, your girlfriend's policy, your boyfriend's policy.
If you're on the bus and it gets rear-ended, and you don't have any of your own policy, you can go through the city that you're in. They'll have coverage attached to their fleet of buses.
If you're a passenger in an Uber,
that's right.
If you live with your parents and you're an occasional driver on their policy, you might not necessarily even know it. It might not have been a conversation you've had with your parents, but you could be covered under their policy.
If you don't know, reach out.
And as I said, the system it's supposed to be a safety net. So there's ways to find coverage. And at the end of the day, you always have the motor vehicle accident claims fund.
Well, we've talked a little bit about it. You've mentioned that you can recover things like lost income. There's other benefits as well that we'll get into mostly in the next episode, but I want to have a discussion here about what we call specified benefits. Those would be income replacement benefits, non-earner benefits, and caregiver benefits. And these are the three sort of cash. These are the ones where instead of getting your funding for treatment, they'll give you a check.
And
let's start with the income replacement benefit.
Yeah, so we'll be talking mostly about the mandatory. And again, there's going to be changes to this, but you can elect or you can pay for elevated tiers of benefits. But generally, we're going to be talking about just the mandatory baseline that everyone has access to.
The minimum coverage.
Minimum coverage. So income replacement benefit is, I was involved in a car accident, I cannot work. So the maximum benefit you can get as the baseline is $400 per week.
It's really not that much money at the end of the day, is it?
not that much money. You can, you can in principle get it for a lifetime. So this isn't one where there's a hard cap in terms of the timeline, but there is a timeline element in terms of the test that you have to meet to qualify for income replacement benefit.
So what are those tests?
So within the first 2 years, the test is whether your impairment substantially or you suffer a substantial inability to perform the essential tasks of your employment.
All right. So accident happens. You're injured because of that accident. You're not able to work, and you've made an application. You've notified your insurance company that you've been involved in this accident, and you've submitted the requisite paperwork to say, I'm not working. I need some financial assistance by way of an income replacement benefit. What the insurer will do is they'll look at your injuries. You'll provide them with some medical information about what has happened to you and probably a description of what your job happens to be. Although if the injuries are severe enough, I don't think they really pry too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so long as you suffer this substantial inability to perform the essential tasks of your employment, the insurer will cut you a $400 check per week that is there to make up for the fact that you can't work.
Right. And this is, the language is a bit technical and it's defined in the case law, but put simply, this is, can you do your job? The job you were doing, can you do it?
That's right, your job.
And there's often, the insurance company can assess you, and we'll get into assessments later in a different episode. But generally speaking, it's about, can you do your job? What's essential to that job? They'll want details about your job, maybe a job description, and they'll be comparing the essential tasks of your job with the impairments that you suffered as a result of this accident. After 2 years, the test gets significantly harder. And the test is whether you suffer a complete inability to engage in the essential tasks of any employment
For which you
you're
are
reasonably suited by
education, training, and experience.
You got it. So, put simply again, this is within 2 years, can you do your job? After 2 years, can you do any job
that you're within your training?
Yeah.
And there's differences there, right? So if you're working as a brain surgeon and you're not able to do that job anymore, they can't say, well, you could be a parking attendant. It's
Right.
just not comparable.
Right. So they do look to a relative comparison.
Yeah.
It's like there are some jobs, it's like, yeah, you could do that, but if you just don't have any of the educational background to do that job, they can't really be like, oh, why aren't you an X-ray technician? It's like, well, I don't have any of the qualifications.
Right.
to
I
do
was
that.
working as a construction, road works, construction worker. I don't have any of that training.
Right.
So they can't make you do that.
So it's a bit more nuanced than just can you do any job, but it's obviously a lot harder of a test to meet than can you do the job you were previously doing. But if you meet that test, you can keep getting the $400 a week into the future.
For life, really, as you said, there is a change after you turn 65. There's a bit of a formula that's used to calculate your benefit. But so long as you do suffer that complete inability, you will remain eligible to receive this income replacement benefit. Like we said, it's not a lot, and there are ways that you can increase that by buying optional coverage. But it's there for anybody and everybody who was working at the time of the accident or shortly before. You don't necessarily have to be working at that exact time, but if you were working in the year before the accident, you can still claim an income replacement benefit.
And then non-owner benefit, this is you're retired, you're a student and you're not working, or you're just unemployed. And this is significantly more limited. So financially, it's $185 per week.
It is, and it's only for a maximum of 2 years as well. So this one is not like the income replacement benefit. It doesn't go on forever. It used to. It no longer does due to legislative changes. But what's the test on this one?
A complete inability to carry on normal life.
Wow, that's a doozy of a test.
Yeah, so this is, generally speaking, this is only going to apply. And this benefit category, it kind of used to be a bit more generous. It used to persist longer. But now it's just a hard cutoff, 2 years, and you have to be really seriously impaired such that your life is fundamentally changed and you can't continue doing the things you used to do, whatever they were.
That's right. And I always enjoyed working on these types of files. They could become very complex arguments, really, about what was the person's life before the accident, how has it been impacted, and they were quite a lot of fun to work on. Because of the limitation to a 2-year window, we see far fewer of these going to the dispute stage, and more of them are either paid out for 2 years. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money at $185 a week for 104 weeks, or they're abandoned because the cost of pursuing them is not worth the reward, so to say, at the end of the day, if you are found to be entitled. That may change if there's legislated changes to the cost regime at the tribunal, but for now, we really don't see a lot of these non-earner benefits any longer.
And then caregiver benefits. So there's a big caveat which we're going to get. Will we get into catastrophic next episode, or
possibly? I think it should be its own episode. We'll definitely hint or touch on it a little bit in part 2 of the Bonanza, but for now, we'll just sort of mention that it's a level of impairment.
Right. And so if you meet catastrophic impairment, which is, as it sounds,
really bad,
the worst type of impairment, then you can claim caregiver benefits. So this is if you're providing caregiving services, and that's a very formal way of saying it, but it basically means you're looking after your children or a spouse or parents or
a relative, whoever. If you're looking after somebody as essentially your job or with the majority of your time, then you would qualify for this so long as you're also catastrophically impaired.
Right. And it's $250 per week for the first person within your care, essentially, and then $50 for every other person. And this is one where I to be honest, I just haven't worked on too many cases where it's a factor, but just reading out loud now, I'm just thinking how kind of unforgiving this seems in terms of the recognition of how many Ontarians are caregivers and how exclusive a class of people can get this caregiver benefit.
It's a really small window given that you need the catastrophic finding. What we see most often is those who are catastrophically impaired are also probably working or had been working at the time. And so because that's $400 a week and the caregiver is only $250 a week, you would elect to go with the income replacement benefit coverage unless you were caregiving for enough people that it bumped it over the $400.
And the thing to remember when in everything we're saying, this scheme, the accident benefit scheme, everything we've just described, it is related, but it doesn't mean that there is no civil lawsuit at the courthouse that you can pursue for other losses. You can.
That's right.
That's why we start talking about fault, liability, causation.
Yeah, we just want to stress that these are available because honestly, people I talk to, friends or family, and I explain what I do with my job, most of them are like, accident benefit, what are those? I don't really get it. I don't understand it. And they can be really substantial. They can also be very important for making sure that you're able to recover in a timely manner. I can't stress to people enough to consult the appropriate professional about making sure you're adequately covered with this.
Yeah, important stuff. So with that, we're going to wrap up part 1 of the Accident Benefits Bonanza, and we're going to move on to shout outs. So in this section, we can shout out a person, thing, news tidbit, or event, and we spoke earlier, and we're going to mutually decide to shout out the CCLA Awards Gala. So I mentioned them earlier in the show. This is the County of Carleton Law Association. Every June, they hold an awards gala. It's June 12th, 2025, and it's about celebrating excellence within the Ottawa legal community.
That's right. There's some awards that go out to excellent counsel who've worked a long time and have reached the pinnacle of their careers and should be lauded for that. Usually some excellent speeches from those people and from the people who are introducing the award winner. I'm always blown away by the accomplishments of some of these careers and, the advocacy skills of the people who present them as well.
Yeah, the speech is always great, and it's always just a good event to go to feel pretty humbled about your own accomplishments, and think when you see some of these legends of the community and what they've achieved, and it's great to see people getting recognized, and that's held at the Rogers Center, which I only just learned it was called the Rogers Center. In my mind, it's all the Shaw Center.
I still think of the baseball stadium, right? Because it's also called the Rogers Center
Right.
in Toronto. And so
Can
they
you
should have come
imagine?
up with a different name for it. I'll meet you at the Rogers Center,
Yeah.
4 hours away.
So it's going to be there on June 12th, and we'll be going, and we hope our listeners who are part of the CCLA will also attend. And with that, we'll say our goodbyes. Where can you find our team, Stan?
You can find us at nelliganlaw.ca. You can also find Civil Banter by email at civilbanter@nelliganlaw.ca. So write in if you have any questions, corrections, things like that. If you want anything in particular addressed on the podcast, we're open to suggestions and criticisms as well.
Constructive criticism only, please. And Stan, I hear you've recently updated your LinkedIn handle.
Yeah, I thought I had done this before, but I guess not. And you pointed that out. So we tested it earlier today, and I have, in fact, rectified the LinkedIn link. It's now linkedin.com/in/Stanford Cummings. And that's where you can find me.
And I'm on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/H Mills McEwen. And I've been posting lately on the hotly contested changes to the civil litigation rules of practice, which I'm sure will be an episode unto itself.
That one's going to be a long one if we do it. We'll have to see what happens. It's very much up in the air right now, is it not?
Up in the air. Will it be up in the air by June 11th? I believe it will be up in the air by the time this airs. So more to come. Stay tuned. But with that, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and that is a wrap.